Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver stories for the weekend at September 10th, 2017. Cryptocurrency status in turmoil. China bans initial coin offerings during the week, and also China was rumored to close cryptocurrency exchanges. Russia and Malaysia add to warnings on ICO. Canadian regulators approve a Bitcoin fund. And there's more holes in that Chinese gold-backed yuan denominated oil contract story. And gold and silver rose again. So those are the stories we are going to talk about today. Let's get down to the gold and silver prices first during the week. Gold managed to tack on another 1.67% and closed at 1346. Gold at one point was over 1350, but it looked like that wasn't to be by the end of the week, and Friday there was a slight sell-off and gold closed below 1350. Same with silver. Silver had cracked its head above $18 an ounce and closed the week at 1793 for a 1.36 gain over the last week's close of 1769. And you'll see the gold-silver ratio still remains above 75 to 1, where it's been for quite some time. Please consider donating to Smaulgld via PayPal, via becoming a patron, or donating Bitcoin or Litecoin. If you appreciate these reports, I do have a relatively small but devoted audience, so thank you for those who do indeed donate, and for those of you who just listen. Now, let's take a look at some of the stories we're going to do this week through the Twitter timeline. Well, first one, I just noted that gold doesn't deduct interest. One of the raps they always have against gold is it doesn't pay interest. And I saw this chart that showed all of the central banks that actually have negative interest rates. So at least gold, well, maybe it doesn't pay interest, but it certainly doesn't charge you, other than your storage fees, but they're nowhere near a negative interest rate. That's your carrying cost. It's not the same as reducing the value of your gold itself. Okay, China banned ICOs, and when they banned the ICOs, the initial reaction was a sell-off in the cryptocurrencies, and my initial reaction was I thought that such a move, banning the ICOs, would help Bitcoin, Litecoin, and other cryptocurrencies because they're not ICOs. ICOs are basically, I guess in a sense, derivatives of cryptocurrencies where companies raise Ethereum and sometimes Bitcoin in order to fund a project, and they issue tokens or coins as a result. That's a much different process than just the issuance of a cryptocurrency, which is not based on the value of it is not based on what a particular enterprise or company might do. And indeed, there was an initial sell-off, and then the Bitcoin, Litecoin type cryptocurrencies did indeed rise. That rise was short-lived because, well, before we get into that, just a side note, if they're going to ban ICOs in China, then what happens to the AC chain ICO? You know, the one that's going to digitize T. It's going to be run through the IMF, and they're going to issue SDRs, and they're going to enslave humanity, and Americans aren't going to be able to participate. You know, that cockamamie story. Well, I guess that's on hold for now if ICOs are banned in China, because AC Chain was an ICO. Guess they're going to have to get on the phone with the IMF, and the IMF's going to have to get on the phone with China and give them a dressing down, because they're destroying the IMF's plan to enslave humanity. All right, back to what then happened after the China banned the ICOs. Well, the price did rise on Bitcoin, Litecoin for a couple of days, and then there was a report that Bitcoin, well, it says Bitcoin's price tanks after China. There was a report that they may shut down the exchanges. Now, most of the Bitcoin trading happens in China on OKCoin, Yobi, this BTC. There's about 3 or 4 very large Chinese crypto exchanges. I'd say they probably trade 60-70%, if not more, of all the cryptocurrencies. And of course, when that news came out, the price tanked again and has been tanking ever since. Now, here's one of those. This is the second or third largest exchange in China, and therefore the second or third largest exchange in the world. They said they haven't heard anything from the Chinese regulator, so this will keep you posted This could be just a way of getting people to sell, and for people, as a favor to people who want to get back in. It could be that China is looking to shut down the exchanges. My guess is that they may shut down the exchanges, but they will reopen and they'll be more heavily regulated. And they may be run more by Chinese government officials or people who are in favor with the Chinese government, or they may continue, they may be reopened under new rules with the same exchanges. So I don't expect China to just shut down or try to shut down the entire process. I think what they're doing here is they're doing a reset by banning the ICOs and then regulating the exchanges, which in a sense sounds prudent from a governmental perspective, and we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, in Canada, regulators approve first Bitcoin fund. Now, the reason I noticed this, not the reason I noticed it, the reason I note it is Canada has been very friendly towards cryptocurrencies and has been, I'd say, hostile to gold because the Canadian central bank sold all of its gold over the last few years. So it's interesting that they're not out to get Bitcoin, and they've approved the first Bitcoin fund. They seem to have a very friendly regulatory environment towards Bitcoin. Strange. Okay, let's see what else happened. Now, Russia, which they had mentioned a while back, they were thinking about creating a digital Russian ruble type currency based off the Ethereum blockchain. They had been mentioned that one of the pals of Vladimir Putin was going to was raising funds to open up a very large Bitcoin mining operation to take advantage of the cheap electricity in Russia. And then there was word out of Russia, a Russian minister, state understands cryptocurrencies are real. There's no sense banning them, need to regulate them. And I think that's become the sense of most governments. Rather than ban it, they want to get in on it. They want to regulate, they want to tax, they want to track to the extent they can. And I think that's what's happening. In fact, to the extent that they can get people to trade cryptocurrencies, pay taxes on them, and use them through a convertible type of Visa card into the banking system, I think then the governments are fine with that, because it just allows for the money supply to increase without them having to do it. It all flows back into the system through prepaid cards, Visa cards, MasterCards that allow you to convert your cryptocurrencies into the fiat of your choice. I think that's where governments are headed with this. I don't think they're going to try to ban it. It would be futile to try to ban it. I think they're going to try to co-opt as much of it as they can and then go after the stuff that they don't like. But for the most part, if it can be seamlessly dragged into the current payment system, I think they'd be delighted for that. And I think that's where most of the regulation is headed, and that's what they're trying to do. Just my opinion. Let me have yours below. Now, we are on BitChute, we're on VidMe, and YouTube. So pick your choice of platform. There's reasons why I'm on all three. You never know what can happen to any particular platform. Now, about this Chinese-backed yuan story, the Chinese-denominated oil futures contract backed by gold. Now, last week I did a report on it, and my initial reaction was I thought it was probably 50-50, that it was just a made-up BS story. I'm starting to think it's like 90% BS, maybe even higher. And my point back then was it didn't make sense for China to do that, especially with Saudi Arabia. And I also didn't understand the mechanics of it, and I was also suspicious that the people that they interviewed, they interspersed some interviews for people like from Reuters that weren't commenting on the gold back portion of it. And then they interspersed it with gold bug type people who of course are going to be, the whole story seemed like a plant to me. The whole story seemed like something to get people excited about. It wasn't reported anywhere else. It was reported, and the same story was repeated in a lot of places. And then during the week, I ran across Cruz Jansen, who is a researcher. He does far more and far better research than I do. And he knows about the Shanghai Gold Exchange. He files information, Freedom of Information Act requests with the U.S. government. He's all over the gold scene, and he knows a lot about the Chinese market, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and so on. Well, he actually contacted, so he says, the writer of the article. And one of the things I mentioned initially was the story was written. It just said it is expected China is going to do this. And my first question was, who's expecting this? Is it the person who wrote the article? I mean, who's expecting it and when? The story was written by a guy who's not even in China. The byline was Indonesia. It wasn't from a Chinese news outlet. So it led me to believe that this is just someone speculating, but they put it in print and people believe that when they see it, especially if they want to believe it and they've been listening to too much Jim Willie and Jim Rickards, then they believe this kind of stuff. Well, Coase Jansen says he wrote to the guy who wrote the article, the one that's been republished everywhere, and it says the writer of the article confirmed to me there is no official source of this contract. Now, I wrote to the guy too, I haven't heard back from him. Well, obviously, if he had a source, he would have stated it, or he would have done what the Washington Post or the New York Times do. He could have said unnamed sources. He didn't have any sources, so it seemed like. He just said it is expected that China's going to do this. And of course, everyone's like, yes, that's what they're going to do. And I saw Jim Rickards tweet, look, there's no room for the U.S. dollar in this arrangement. Well, what arrangement? Who says it's even going to happen? Then you have William Middlecoff here saying huge longer-term shift out of the petrodollar, and he was wondering why the mainstream media wasn't covering it. And basically comes back and says they didn't cover it because China didn't announce anything. It's just and he says it's just speculation by gold promoters. And I have to agree, look, based on who was cited in the article and based on there was no source, and the guy who wrote it admitted he didn't have a source. So basically, it sounds to me like the story was just made up. But then I went through that story and I tried to figure out how would that work? Like, where would China get the gold? Would they run out of gold if they were offering to pay basically in gold by converting it? Who would take them up on it? Would they always convert to gold? The story just didn't make a lot of sense to me because the details are scant. It didn't explain whether it was a net gold payment based on the trade with the oil producer. It just didn't say anything. It was just a lot of hype and saying this was a game changer. People love game changer almost as much as they love game over. Well, then I thought, and I just made a point, idle speculation on my part, if this idle speculation itself was going to be true, was where are they going to get the gold from? Because what's on the People's Bank of China isn't that much. It's only 1,800 tons. And supposedly there's a lot of gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange because the amount that was drawn every year is about 2,500 tons every year. Sometimes, well, last year was about 1,950 tons. But the point is, appears to be a lot of gold at the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And I thought, well, maybe they can convert that gold, those contracts, into physical gold for the oil producers. But Coase points out, and he knows his Shanghai Gold Exchange, that gold's not allowed to be exported. Now, of course, the people who want the story to be true say, well, they'll just change the rules. Well, I don't think so. China's just changed the rules. The reason they have that gold locked down, supposedly, is they don't want it to leave the country. Their gold, domestic mining production doesn't leave the country. I'm sure they don't want the Shanghai Gold Exchange gold to leave the country. So now what are the mechanics of this? They're going to drain it out of the People's Bank of China? It doesn't make a stitch of sense. And the only thing I can think of is, and again, this is massive speculation, is that China wants cheap oil. So they have all this gold. They revalue the price of the gold higher, and now they can get cheap oil. Okay, I said that. That's speculation. I don't even give that a snowball's chance in hell of happening. Not in the next 6 months for sure. So these stories that are out there, they gain the currency, no pun intended, of being true. And people insist on, oh, you didn't hear about China. They're going to back. Yeah, they're going to. Yeah, of course they are. Well, I saw it it was in the. Okay, calm down. That's what I hear all the time. Is people citing stories. There's COMEX default, all this nonsense that they constantly repeat. And by the way, and there's another point I made. I think I made it last week, but I'll make it again. If oil-producing nations sell their gold for dollars, they can convert it anytime they want into gold if they so chose. And Saudi Arabia has gold. They can change they don't need China to pay them yuan convertible into gold because they can do that with dollars. the point is that these countries don't seem to be adding gold to their reserves. The only ones that seem to be hell-bent on adding gold to their reserves are the countries that actually produce gold, and it makes sense to add gold to reserves because it's, in a sense, converting your local currency into gold just by taking advantage of your domestic mining supply, like Russia, like Kazakhstan. China's not even adding gold to her reserves. They're still bringing gold into the country. They're still mining tremendous amounts of gold, but they're not adding it to the People's Bank of China, as we'll see tomorrow when we put out the August numbers. The People's Bank of China hasn't added gold to her reserves since October. So I did a piece last night. You might want to check it out. Fake but accurate. This will make you think, I hope. It covers all this alternative financial media nonsense where they produce stories like the AC chain and the gold back yuan and the COMEX imminent default. None of them are true. They never become true, but it doesn't matter. It grabs in the eyeballs. And anyway, this particular article goes through why that's dangerous. Because when the alternative financial media catches onto a real story, and you know it's real is when the mainstream media attacks it, because it impacts their narrative. So the example I gave was when the mainstream media was saying that Hillary Clinton was sick. That was a story that was challenged by the mainstream media, and that put the alternative media into overdrive to defend the story and to prove that it was correct. And then she finally collapsed in a heap on the 9/11 memorial, and the alternative media was vindicated. In the cases where they just make up these types of stories, string facts together and say the IMF is going to enslave humanity with an SDR issued by the IMF based on digitized T, no one challenges that nonsense. And because no one challenges it, you just get this massive echo chamber of people repeating it. You didn't hear about the ACC? Game over. Enslavement. Yep. I've had enough of going through that. I probably will leave that alone for a while, but that's my complaint about the alternative financial media is they never challenge their own BS. They challenge the mainstream media, and they'll do a very good job of it, but when it comes to these types of stories, Akuz is right. Where'd this guy get the story from? The guy says, there is no source. Okay, so you just made it up. Wonderful. And now everybody's repeating it as if it's true. Game over. All right, let's see the other stories we covered. So here's what I was talking about. Kazakhstan splashes into the top 20. That's a story. That's a real story. Kazakhstan adding gold to her reserves 58 months in a row. No one reports on that. Not that exciting. It's a pretty big deal. It shows a trend that there's a country. They're a decent gold producer. I think they're in the top 20. And they deem it prudent to add gold to their reserves. And they do it. China bans ICO. There's a story. Now, during the week, we released they were released by the U.S. Mint, the Silver Eagle, Gold Eagle, Perth Mint Silver, Perth Mint Gold sales, and they weren't good. And again, some of the alternative financial media is trying to tell you Silver Eagle sales are soaring in spite. No, they're not. They're just on the way down, and they're even worse for gold sales. Now, oddly enough, U.S. Mint sales are down, price is up. What does that tell you? The U.S. Mint has nothing, the sales at the U.S. Mint have nothing to do with the direction of gold prices. U.S. Mint sales are way up in 2015, especially for silver. Record year, price went down. During the week, I saw this story. I sent it over to Sal at Salivate Metal. Does a great job of narrating these types of stories. So I sent him the story, and he did you want to check it out here. I've linked it right here. You can just click on the link or right on the video and check out what he has to say about these Scythians whose artifacts are going to be displayed this month at the British Museum. Other stories: half a ton of gold stolen from the Yanukovych family seized abroad. It's a Ukrainian family. Russian Sberbank plans to increase gold supplies to China. Actually, right here, I'm going to put in, I did an interview with Rory at the Daily Coin during the week. So that'll be linked here as well. You can check that out. 40-minute interview, long discussion we had. real estate project in Dubai to be the first major development you can purchase Bitcoin. See, here's the thing. There's just too much use now of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Cat's out of the bag. If they were going to stop this thing, they would have stopped it 3, 4, 5 years ago. I expected it to go away 3, 4, 5 years ago after the first crash. But those days are over. So now we all have to look at and pay attention to cryptocurrencies. You could be against them, you could be for them, but just predicting they're going to go away, the longer they're around, the less chance that they're going to go away. So I've now incorporated covering them, not hyping them, not pumping them, but trying to take a realistic view as to how they fit into the financial system. And my view is that I don't take this view they're going to end the central banks or they're going to go to $3 trillion. They're going to become the new. I actually think that they're going to be subsumed into, at least partially or very big extent of it, into the banking system. They'll be traded on regulated exchange. Eventually, we saw the Fidelity and Coinbase agreement to have Coinbase on the Fidelity platform. I think one day, maybe in 3 to 5 years, maybe less, you'll have cryptocurrencies traded alongside stocks. Russia already said they're going to do this. They're going to trade them on the Moscow exchange. And people are going to take their profits in cryptos and they're going to use that money the way they do currently with regular fiat. And then with the ICOs, it looks like they will change that and they'll regulate those. And ICOs, and I talked about this 2 or 3 months ago, will be run currently the way IPOs are run, unfortunately, through Wall Street, through Silicon Valley, and through the SEC and Reg D offerings and all the regulated offerings. And it'll be totally embraced and totally subsumed by the existing banking system. Now, the Bitcoiners are going to yell and scream, that can't happen, that's not going to happen. You know, I've been accused of being a Bitcoin fanatic. I've been accused of being a gold hater. I'm neither. I'm neutral on these assets. I'm just analyzing, not cheerleading, not trying to produce an outcome. Because first of all, I can't produce an outcome. No matter what I say, gold is going to do what it's going to do. Bitcoin is going to do what it's going to do. Governments are going to do what they're going to do. Me sitting here telling you they're going to take down the system. I don't believe that. And even if I believed it, me saying it isn't going to make it true. A lot of you know that that's how I analyze stuff. Some of you don't, and you expect differently. And if I don't cheerlead or don't promote something, you think I hate gold. I don't. I am just reporting what I see happening. And gold and silver are manipulated, and Bitcoin, I have a lot of different views on it. I'm not quite sure where it's headed, where it came from. I have an open mind on all of that. I don't have my mind set on what Bitcoin is, what it should be, what it will become. Currently, I think what it will become is part of payment systems, and people will profit from it. They'll pay tax on it. It'll be regulated, and they'll buy stuff with it, like real estate here in Dubai. All right, Fed chatter. They're still yakking about. You could read. I'm tired of talking about the Fed. DACA was rescinded. Now, for those of you who don't know what DACA is, it's important, obviously, if you're impacted by it. But I'm going to try to bring this around to the economics. So, the President Obama decided last couple of years ago that the people, the kids that were in the country, they didn't sneak across the border. Their parents did. That they should basically be allowed to stay here, become Americans. I don't even think he went that far. He just said that we'll just leave them alone. Now, you may believe that's the right thing to do. However, the right thing to do is to pass immigration laws that either allow for that, don't allow for that, provide an exemption, provide a period of time for which they're exempted. None of that. Obama just decided, this is what I'm going to do, and he just did it. Now that, apparently, if anyone who knows anything, and Obama should, he was a constitutional law professor, is unconstitutional. That's not something the president can just do. And our friend here, Paul Ryan, if you click on that link, he said it was. Now he's saying Trump and Sessions should not have rescinded DACA. Of course they should have. What should be done, if he's in favor of DACA, and he's in favor of letting these kids stay, then pass a law. Send it to the president, and the president can either veto it or sign it. It seems to me the president is saying, I'll sign it. And it seems to me they're playing this game of, hey, it wasn't done right, so that meant what Obama did was lawless. We'll show him. Now you guys show us that you know how to pass legislation. And if you know Congress, they probably don't know how to pass the legislation. And so Trump will probably never have a bill on his desk. Now, he's told people nothing's going to happen for 6 months. Don't worry. What the understanding is that Congress will fix it in 6 months. I don't think anything's going to happen in 6 months. As we've seen, they haven't been able to do anything since Trump has been in office. So I think it's more political than actually moral or legal that they did this. By the way, they also, Sessions and DOJ decided not to go after, prosecute Lois Lerner and the IRS and the FBI. So it looks like they're cherry picking where they wish to state their principles, but obviously they're claiming to state it here. U.S. Mint sales, I mentioned, they're not good. September, after all this big spike that happened at the end of August, there was no follow through the next 3 days of August. There was no follow through in September. Here we are, September 10th, and they've sold 25,000 American Silver Eagles and 2,000 American Gold Eagles. That's all month. You're a third of the way through. So don't let anyone tell you that silver and gold sales are soaring, spiking. Day or two's worth of data doesn't mean a thing. If you want to buy gold or silver, you can do so through the Smaulgld site, through the links below, or through the website BGSC, Golden Eagle Coins, SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange. You pay no more, no less if you visit those sites yourself, so why not visit them through the Smaulgld site? If you do, Smaulgld gets a small commission when you buy, not when you click. And you can compare pricing and shipping and get the best deal on whatever you're looking for. There's your Austrian Philharmonic. That's the picture of the concert hall right there. All right, as I mentioned, Gold Eagle sales fell further in August. There's a video on that. 2 Miami men convicted of laundering billions in Amazon gold. I think this story has to do with Elemental, that company that owns Provident Metal. I'm not sure. You have to check out that link and find out what they were doing. I think they were bringing the gold in illegally, and then I guess they didn't pay the tax. I'm not quite sure what was illegal, whether the mine was illegal or the transportation of it was. But the story's there for you to click on. Canada raised interest rates. Very surprising for any central bank to be raising interest rates, but they did. Apparently, Canada's doing better. The loonie's up, and they're allowing this Bitcoin fund to go into place, but they don't have any gold. Stanley Fischer, he's the vice chair of the Fed. He's deciding he's quitting by October. So it looks like, and Yellen's term is up next year. So it looks like Trump has a few Fed official appointments. Let's see who he puts in there. I don't expect him to put in anyone, sound money type guy in there, type woman. I think he's just going to go with the same Goldman Sachs gang. He's got the Gary Cohen guy there. Although they don't seem to be getting along. I don't know why. He might appoint him to the Fed, but that would be probably a mistake to put somebody who's bad-mouthing him and he's having a tough time with. Although the old Godfather, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. Perth Mint gold sales were okay. You can check out that. Here's the Russia central bank issues warnings on ICOs, cryptocurrencies. Here's a big story. Goldbugs love Venezuela's Maduro says will shun U.S. dollars in favor of yuan and others. Game over, game over. Dollar collapse because Venezuela is annoyed, and they're not going to take dollars for their oil. They're going to take whatever else they can take. Okay. New York Fed President Dudley stands by Fed rate hikes. See, they never want to give up. They always want to say once they start the ball rolling that they're doing rate hikes, they want to make it act like they're going to do one every month, and they don't. They did one a year for 2 years, and then this year they've done a couple. But they always want to make it sound like they could do it at any time. And there's Mice there, comfortable raising rates again this year. Of course she is. They might not, but it doesn't matter. She's comfortable with it. Bitcoin price tanks after a report China may shut down exchanges. We talked about that. Here's the link for your Malaysian finance regulator warns investors over ICO risk. And here's your Perth Mint sales fall in August story. And then the last story was fake but accurate. This will make you think, I hope. That about does it for the week. During the week, you can look forward to from Smaulgld. What do we got? We got the Shanghai Gold Exchange withdrawals for the month of August. The People's Bank of China, which I already spilled the beans on, added no gold to reserves In August, I've got a Castle Society article. I've got the 13 states that have made gold and silver either legal tender or tax-free. We've got Canadian Mint finally to do gold and silver reports for the first half of the year, and also Indian gold and Indian silver imports for the month of July. And then we've got Ben Bernanke, a Smaulgld speculation series episode coming up on what Ben Bernanke thinks or means to cryptocurrencies. Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and check in again tomorrow.